What's up, guys? I'm here with Sam. We are at the GRAR building, just had a little EXP conference luncheon, and we just wanted to sit down together. He is into investment properties just like I am, and he houses his a little bit different way in a self-directed IRA. We're just going to talk about that today. It's something that's very interesting to me, a good way to kind of shelter and protect your assets and also some of your tax liability. And it's something a lot of people are starting to do. So I'll let him introduce himself, and we're just going to have a quick conversation about it.
Yeah, my name is Sam Southwick, and I'm a real estate investor and realtor. I started out, probably about 15 years ago when the foreclosures all came about and whatever. And honestly, what happened was I kind of ran out of capital and was looking at other ways to raise money, and learned that I could actually use some of my retirement money in an IRA account to actually purchase real estate. So it's what's called a self-directed individual retirement account. And the difference is we're all familiar with, stocks and bonds that you might have at Fidelity or Vanguard. That's a custodian as well. But in order to be able to do real estate within a self-directed IRA, you need to go to a custodian that specializes in self-directed accounts. There are several of them in the United States. I've used Equity Trust, Entrust. The newer one that I'm actually switching a lot to is called Directed IRA. And so you have to use one of those custodians because they understand what the details of how to hold the real estate and manage those in your particular portfolio. So a couple key points about if you're considering holding real estate in an IRA is the two primary premises are it's not money today. It's actually a retirement account. So you can't benefit from cash flow today. Everything stays in the IRA. The IRA is actually on the deed. That's who owns the property, is your individual retirement account. So all monies have to stay within the IRA. And then just like if you were stocks and bonds at 59.5, you can start doing withdrawals and such, penalty free. The other thing to keep in mind too is that there are some limitations in what's called self-dealing. And self-dealing is basically the IRS is saying that you can't create additional value or financial benefits beyond the investment that you have in the account. So for example, you can't swing a hammer. You can't do repairs or what's called sweat equity. You can manage the property, you can select tenants, you can hire the contractors, do all that. But the real thing that you have to be careful of, you just can't create any equity outside of your initial investment. So that's why you can't, work on the properties.
You're saying yourself. You can't
do that yourself.
You can hire somebody to.
Right. So for someone like yourself who's very talented as a builder and such, that's a real challenge.
Tough.
But in the broader picture, this isn't your whole portfolio. I own several properties just outright in LLCs, and then I've got a large investment in land contracts and rentals that I hold in my IRA. Another thing to keep in mind is it doesn't just have to be an IRA account. It can be a Roth IRA. It can be a health savings account. It can be a solo, 401k if you're self-employed. You can even do Coverdale education plans. Those are all retirement vehicles that with the right custodian, you can hold real estate in any of those. Wow. So if you've got a sizable, spread between your health savings account and an IRA and a Roth, you could actually take money from all three of those accounts and then buy in a property, using all those different accounts. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But from my standpoint, it's like I do have a sizable stock and bond investment from being in the corporate world for years. But then I thought, wow, I could really, get my feet wet in real estate investing, something I know, something I'm passionate about. So it was really a cool vehicle for me to get started. In addition to your own accounts, you can also partner with friends. You can partner with family. The one thing that is also very important to recognize about the property is, again, not only can you not work on it, but you can't use it. You can't benefit from it personally, really in any way. It has to be what they call arm's length, okay? So again, you could partner with your siblings, your dad, your grandparents to do a deal together. They could bring non-IRA money, cash in. They could bring IRA money and get creative about all the different ways to structure a deal, but you can't rent that. But you can't buy like a college rental property and put your daughter in it. Okay, you can't have a short-term Airbnb or something and then go use it yourself because that property is owned by the IRA, and the real important IRS rules are it's got to be separate from yourself. That's why you've got that tax sheltered growth in that account. So pretty important. The other thing that a lot of people ask is, well, I've already got a couple rental properties. Can I just put those in the IRA? You can't take properties you already own and roll those into those accounts. They've got to be new investments. Pretty important.
So when you're financing a deal like that, say you contact your realtor and you want to buy this house right here, how does that financing look? Or like a pre-approval letter type of a thing?
You can go like to the equity trust company. They have a feature on one of their web portals where you go in and I can get a proof of funds letter. Literally go in and say, I just need a proof of funds letter. It prints off my account information, shows my available balance.
Perfect.
Okay? So you can structure deals with cash outside of the IRA. You can use a portion of your IRA. And you can also borrow money. You can do a finance thing. The tricky thing about finance deals is the way IRS rules, again, is like I say, you're using tax sheltered money to create an investment vehicle. If you go out and finance something, they're kind of like, well, you're using outside money and you're getting the tax advantage of deferment. So there's a thing what's called unrelated business income tax. So the portion of the project that is debt financed, that you get a mortgage or something on, is subject to a tax. There is a formula that associates, it's only the portion that is debt financed. Then there's a breakout of other expenses that you can deduct, and the first $1,000 of tax liability is also exempt. So even though it might sound like it's kind of complicated or whatever, I've done a couple different models, and it certainly makes more sense to still do the debt financing to leverage to actually get more properties. So don't let that scare you off, okay? The other thing that's really interesting in my experience is I started out with the equity trust company, and their forte is primarily as what's called a traditional custodian for IRA investments. They like to make sure that you're really careful and operating within the boundaries of the IRS rules, which is really important. Again, you don't want to create or compromise that IRS, shield, basically, or they could come after you for interest and penalties because you've, crossed some of the prohibited transaction lines. So they're very conservative. The other opportunity is instead of having something that's called and managed within like the equity trust as custodian, you can work with other custodians that are familiar with doing what we call checkbook IRA or an LLC IRA. And what that allows you to do is your self-directed account sits at the custodian, and then that IRA account actually can own other LLCs. So what's cool about that is if you have the checkbook set up, you as the beneficiary of the account can actually manage the tenants, pay the bills, do everything solo on your own. If you're in a traditional one where you're just a custodial account, every time you need to pay a bill, you've got to go to that custodian and get a check. You've got to have them sign documents. It's very tedious. Yeah. I've done it for years. It's slow. If you need to close something quickly, it slows down the process. It is all manageable. It's just what I would call a little hairy, if you were, right? So I have transitioned to a checkbook LLC to manage my accounts because, again, it's just much cleaner. Instead of the property being titled in the IRA, it's titled in the LLC. But for IRS reasons, your IRA account actually owns the LLC, so it's very simple. The thing that you have to be very cautious, again, this is where you just don't want to overstep the bounds, is you got to make sure that you're keeping your personal funds separate from that checkbook. It's no different than any other LLC, investment. Right? Yeah. But again, you can't benefit in any way, shape, or form from these properties today. You can't pay yourself a management fee. If you're a realtor and you're listing or selling those properties, do not take a commission. It's okay if you want to manage the sale, do the buy. You just can't take a commission. So it's kind of tricky in that way, but boy, I started out, modestly. I transferred $100,000 from a traditional IRA from a former employer, and I rolled that in, and I would say within the next 2 years, I'll be up to about $1 million account value. So in about 12 years, I took $100,000 to almost just over $1 million.
It's like a 12% return almost on your investment, which you're going to be hard pressed to find with a normal IRA.
My overall, absolutely. I think my overall performance within my IRA accounts is about 13.3% last year when I checked it.
Which beats the market for them.
And again, that just continues to grow, tax-free. The payments keep coming in monthly, and within usually about every year, I've got to go buy another property because I got a bunch of cash in there. It's not doing any good, so it's really important. The other thing that's an opportunity, and I just created one myself this year, being a self-employed individual, is I opened up what's called a solo 401k. And the really cool thing about an IRA self-directed Roth 401k is that the debt financing piece that is typically subject to unrelated business income tax, in a 401k solo, you can go out and borrow all the money for it with a real low down payment, and it's not subject to any of that business tax. Wow. It's just a little carve out that's in the solo 401k. You've got to be self-employed, and you can be the only employee like most realtors are, and your wife could work at the family. That's it. But you can sock up to this year $66,000 into a 401k solo. You can backdoor Roth it in depending on your income. And if you can get into a low down payment property with a Roth and debt finance it, when you go to take that distribution out at retirement age, you owe no tax. I've seen guys that have done deals where they buy, a house that needs an extensive rehab for $50K cash. They've got the other money. You got to have the money in the account to also fund the repairs and stuff. But they clear $100,000 on a flip in a Roth IRA. Mad money,
Yeah.
pay no tax.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's an emphasis. I would encourage you, if you're really interested in this, I'm always available to talk to folks. But there's a couple attorneys that have an incredible website. They're my mentors now. The one guy's name is Matt Sorensen, and the other gentleman's name is Mark Kohler. And if you just Google them or go on YouTube, they are the guys that are tax attorneys. They're the most knowledgeable IRA guys I've ever known. I've talked to a couple local CPAs and stuff, and they have a little general knowledge, but these guys are pros. They're based out of Utah. That's who I use to set up my self-directed accounts that I'm moving over. They're the ones that set up my checkbook IRAs. But YouTube videos, there's got to be 100 hours of YouTube videos if you want to educate yourself.
Yeah, probably more. Yeah.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
It really is phenomenal. So I would really encourage you, even if you just want to really explore a little bit further, you can go there and YouTube yourself to crazy. I get on my treadmill to do a little exercise, and I'm watching these guys' YouTube videos all the time. The time, yeah. So in a nutshell, that's pretty much what it is.
I think where that probably would really help an individual, like in my personal investing experience, my wife and I own 6 rentals. We would like to buy more. Well, you can't always save a down payment every year if you're buying them traditionally, putting them in an LLC like what you're talking about.
Right.
Sometimes you are maybe later in life and you've got that huge chunk of change that you're not going to access until you're 55 or 60, and you could put it to work to make even more money down the road and still continue to grow your portfolio.
Absolutely.
Without using your own cash, so to speak.
It's very common for people to partner with family. You've got retired parents or somebody else who's retired and they've got a bunch of money sitting in the market. They've already said, God, I've got my fill of stocks and bonds. Or like my mother's retired, she takes these minimum distributions and she's got all this money just sitting in her checkbook. No money. So hey, well, let's partner on a deal. So but my mother is my partner on, I want to say, about 3 real estate deals.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I have not done a debt finance deal yet. I've always been able to part with people or generate enough cash on my own. Yeah. But because this year I set up that solo 401k as a self-employed individual, my goal there is to convert some of that to Roth within the account, and then do a low down payment deal with debt financing, because again, in the 401k solo model, it's not subject to unrelated business tax. I don't know how that is, but that particular, the solo account, is a little carve-out. Only debt financing on rental properties.
Gotcha.
Now you can do all kinds of other investments. If you really want to get crazy in an IRA, you can do equipment leasing. You could invest in a small business through an LLC. I mean, this conversation is about real estate.
Yeah.
But to self-direct your funds, other than just call it Fidelity and buy the S&P 500, the opportunities are endless. They really are. There's only 2 prohibited things that you can't invest in according to IRS rules. One is alcohol, anything related to alcohol, and anything that's deemed to be collectibles, right? So, artwork or gun collections, that sort of stuff, and alcohol are prohibited. But, the crypto world has just exploded in the self-directed IRA.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's really cool. But yeah, if you have any interest at all, if this really excites you, which you can obviously tell by me, it does. I get really pumped up about it. Go again to Matt Sorensen or Mark Kohler and just watch those YouTube videos and you'll get hooked.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is put a link to the YouTube page on,
That'd be great.
On the post when we do
Yeah.
this. And this is just totally scratching the surface. I mean,
Sure.
in a few conversations that Sam and I have had, it goes right over my head. And so we need to continue this.
Yeah.
It is interesting to me. And we do have a chunk of change that could be used for something like this to, again, if your portfolio, you want to grow it and you're stalling out, you just start looking for different.
It's just
different
diversification.
paths.
A diversification. Especially the older you get, the closer you get to retirement, the diversification piece is really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really important. So
Thank you, Sam.
my pleasure.